Hello, this is Shadow Boy, and welcome to a game called Dicentra. This is a gothic visual novel game I found. It's somewhere on itch.io. Uh, it, my breath comes out in puffy clouds as I limp through the rain. It blurs my vision, forcing me to feel my way through the forest with wind crushing against me from all sides. I've never been much for prayer, but it would be too late to start now. I feel like digging my claws into anything that makes me feel less alone right now. And again, what could God hear or would hear with someone like me now? Like me out. Fumble over tangles of roots and slip over wet moss. My bones instantly shudder from the cold shock that shoots up my arms as my nails grab onto the near rock. Cuts all over my body start to sting again, and a pathetic whine escapes my throat. My grandmother would have a riot if she could see me now. I can hear her snide remark already. See? What happens when you don't listen to me? As if I wouldn't survive long enough to hear the real deal. I sniffle in frustration and try to shake the feeling away with the rain dripping down my face. Oh, wait. She's always right, of course. For a moment, I thought I'd finally gotten what I wanted so badly. Earned all on my own, in spite of how it was always placed out of my reach. It was almost worth the consequences that came after. Lost in thought, I lost control of my limbs. I'm not used to controlling them all at once, and it's enough to throw me back into the slick earth. My eyes begin to burn. The ice of the rain, the pain that drags along my body suddenly overwhelm me. The storm above is harsh. The thick canopy of trees above me does little to shield me from this rage. Instead, the tree passively turns their leaves away. If I had the guts, I'd throw my grandmother's most colorful curses at them. But I don't. I force myself to take a deep breath. I shakily lift myself from the ground, trying too hard to ignore the bite of pain that comes from my arm. From the middle of summer, it pours hard. The rain comes down like shards of ice against my skin, like it falls with the intent to hurt. In the puddle in front of me, I watch it to disturb the reflection with ripples. In the brief moment where the reflection almost settles, I see piercing yellow lights, dark fur, and wilted ears sleek and clinging to the small, vulnerable form of a wolf pup. Wait. The voice of my grandmother hisses in my mind. What have you done, Basil? I need to go back home. I tear away from the puddle and track on. Please, something. Let me back home. Something. Anything. After making my wish, I wonder if it's a wise thing to ask this forest for a favor. Maybe my weariness is starting to play tricks on my mind. Because I swear, something answers. It's so faint that I question if it's even real. A howl cuts through the wind, or perhaps it's the wind that shrinks away from the sound that ambles through. Fighting my way through the storm has left my body exhausted. My mind might be neglecting its responsibility to remember what reason it was. All my instincts scream to ignore it, but my heart, a stupidly curious thing, made me take a step forward. My fuzzy ears pick up a heavy sound of my heart pounding. I try to convince myself it's because of fear. I need to focus on where the howling's coming from. As I get closer to the sound, it begins to resemble crying. The storm also seems to start to mysteriously retract its claws. Is the forest showing mercy, or has it submitted to something more formidable? I've lived in the woods my whole life. I should know better than anyone never to get too comfortable. A red light perforates the dark atmosphere. I swallow harshly. There is a mansion in the middle of the woods. From a distance it would look abandoned, if not for the hazy red light coming from the rooftop. I squint. Is that a greenhouse? A shadowy figure moves quickly behind its clear walls, startling me. I duck into the tall and neglected grass that grows into the mansion's yard. After a short while, I peek through the blades. The shadow is gone. Did I imagine it? I release a nervous sigh and observe the ground for any sign of life or death. It was a bad idea to come here, a terrible one even. I can't stay here. I retreated back to the shadows of the forest, keeping the mansion in my line of sight. The moment I felt bold enough to turn my back against it, a powerful gale slammed into me. I tumbled back hard, skidding across the ground into the tall grass with a cry. It takes me a moment to recover from my swirling vision. My wounds scream at me, and I wonder how much further I can even go in this state. I grit my teeth and get back on my feet, keeping my weight off my arm as I make for the forest again. Again, I denied entrance by the mysterious force. Panic starts to seep through my bones. Hopelessness might actually be a more welcomed feeling than the tightness that now constricts around my heart. I stare at the trees as though they'll suddenly start playing nice, but beings as ancient as them do not bend to anyone's will but their own. The wind gives me one more shove. It insists I move forward. I bare my adolescent fangs to disguise the hurt. I know now that my choices were nothing but illusions. I face the mansion once again. It's clear that something or someone from the inside is inviting me in. With no other choice, I crept along the worn brick walls of the mansion and tried to find my way in. What should I choose? Faint knocking grabs my attention. I pad to the back of the mansion, and my saving grace comes to form a door left slightly ajar. Aha! I nudge my nose into the tight gap, and relief washes over me when it parts. The ear-piercing screech echoes through the mansion as the door hinges begin to shift. From the looks of it, they hadn't moved it for a long time. The feeling of ice floods my veins. I stay frozen in the doorway. The mansion is occupied. There's no way to just announce my entrance. Fear takes over again. My back paw intuitively steps back so I can attempt to run as far away from this place as I can. The sound of thunder explodes behind me. I feel my body take on a life of its own as I throw myself into the mansion against my will. The door slams on my way in. I breathe shallowly. When it comes to my senses, I'm in the kitchen. It's dark inside the house. The only source of light comes from the window above the counters. Everything beyond its reach is a void. I see a kitchen table and crawl towards it, scratching my nails along the musty wood, flooring in a rush to get beneath it. I stay under the table as my breathing starts returning to a normal pace. My eyes are wide and my ears are perked up, on the lookout for anything that could be a threat. The only sound I could pick up are the heavy drums of rain from outside, an occasional creak of the mansion walls breathing in the night air. When I'm confident that there is no sign of life inside this manor, I crawl back into the open and immediately shake off as much rain and mud as I can. I let myself celebrate the minor luxury of finally escaping the maws of the weather, but I don't let my nerves calm down just yet. As soon as my eyes adjust better to the dark, I take the time to study my surroundings more. I noticed a hearth that lacks any recent maintenance. Dishes crowd the countertops, and a thick layer of dust forces me to smother a sneeze. This place hasn't been occupied in a long time. Surely I can allow myself to breathe just a little bit easier in this space, at least until the storm wanes. I bring in a deep inhale, being careful not to get any dust in my sensitive nose, and tread cautiously. As I sneak further in, I hold my breath at every corner, carefully looking in all directions for danger. The rest of the mansion is as devoid of life as the kitchen. Most of the rooms here have closed doors. The ones I could see were graciously empty, except for the derelict furnishings within. Barely anything is in decent shape. I couldn't guess how long it's been since a human lived in this manor, but based on the scratched hardwood floors and the broken but intricate-looking side table nested in a dark corner, I have the impression that this place was neglected even when it was occupied. My nails tap on the floor as I limp into the hallway, my mind finally settling from all the adrenaline. The ache in my front legs started to swell, and the heat of my body intensifies the pain. I try to admit and to admire the painting lines the wall from end to end, but it's hard to see them in the dark. Through glimpses of light, I could make out some faded landscapes, a few mountains, some castles, and a couple of portraits. One portrait in particular catches my eye. I stop in front of it. I stare at the portrait, foolishly thinking that it's staring right back. The rising heat in my body must be making me see things. As I observe the side profile of a pale woman, I notice that she's eerily the most realistic painting I've seen so far. When she turns her head to look down at my tiny form, every hair on my body goes stiff. Her lovely features captured in oil begins to melt off as she steps out from the painting. Smooth ivory skin shrivels to a deathly pallor. The elaborate gown clinging to her sharp shoulders begins to rot as her torso parts open into a blooming rose, revealing decaying bone and organs that run down her skirt like a horrific decker. I immediately start running away as fast as I physically can. As I scramble away on my hurt leg, I hear something that might be worse than a ghost. The woody and spicy scent of incense fills the humid air, creating a hazy purple fog. The sound of chains moving in an uncontrollable rhythm rattles me into the marrows in my bones. Footsteps fall shortly after, growing louder alongside the clinking chains. It's coming in. My breath quickens. I slide to a halt and backtrack away from the sound. I look behind me and see the glowing apparition of the woman's hunched form, stumbling towards me, dragging a trail of gore with the wet squelch. Hide. I need to hide. But where? My eyes darted across every inch in the hallway, desperately searching for a small sanctuary. The footsteps are right behind me. The ghost is right in front of me. This hallway now feels like a tomb. All the doors are firmly shut. I press against the wall. My heart skipped a beat when I noticed a faint tapping sound coming from behind me. I turn around and witness the outline of a door revealing itself. I waste no time shoveling my muzzle between the cracks to wench it open. As soon as I pried the door open, I hurled myself through and back into the darkness. I walk backwards away from the door, keeping my eye on it. I'm so focused on the door that I bump into something cold and almost trip over it. I look up and see a dark iron staircase curling up to the highest ceiling. A hatch near the top is open, letting the rain from outside drip onto the cold metal. I hear footsteps on it once again, this time much louder. I don't dare to breathe or move. There you are. The voice startles me into moving. No way. I was about to stick around and find out what fate waits me. Every fiber of my being is ringing with danger as I climb the stairs with only adrenaline instructing my limbs. I drag myself up the iron steps until I'm bursting onto the roof and back into the storm. A fog of fright muddles my mind. I see the greenhouse I had spotted earlier and sprinted towards it as fast as I can. I search for a small space to crawl into, tripping over a mess of vines along the way. Thunder and lightning roar above me. A bright flash of white blinds me. I can feel my claws scratch against the wet tiles. The door slams shut in the distance, causing a rippling effect into the walls and reaching the rooftops. When the rippling stops, everything goes quiet. The energy of the manor shifts completely. A jolt of lightning from the storm makes my fur stand. It charges the air and saturates it with a smell of ozone. I shake the smell from my face. The whole world has fallen silent except for the sound of a chilling drip. Basil. I freeze. My eyes carefully follow the coil of dead roots on the gray floor of the greenhouse. I follow its trail all the way to the blood dripping onto the dirty tiles and the pale feet beside it. My eyes climb the mysterious figure. I don't know if I'll ever forget the sight before me for as short as I live. Lightning flashes brightly through the tall windows. Looming rose bushes creep along them. White roses speckled across its dark leaves like stars in the night sky. The bright flowers begin to bleed red before my very eyes. As the rose bush is crimson-soaked center, a small girl stands with her back towards me. Blood drips from tiny bite marks all over her hand. A red flower bulb is crushed between her delicate fingers. Instead of a strong floral scent, the smell of burning paper and wilting lilacs flood my senses. A whine unwillingly crawls up in my throat and cuts through the silence. Time resumes once again. The girl turns. Her gaze pierces right through me. The bulb drops from her hand. She doesn't say a word. Her attention is mine, whether I want it to be or not. Black dots begin to appear in the corner of my vision. The last thing I see is her walking towards me. For everything fades to black. My fever is brutal throughout the night. I slip in and out of consciousness to flames beneath my skin and an ache I'd rather sleep off than face. I try to make my body go back to sleep, but rough hands force my jaw open and I feel something shoved down my throat. The intrusion made me violently restless, but I'm far too weak to fend the intruder away. The dark takes me into its arms once again. I wake to the tang of rusty metal and humid air. The unfamiliar sensation makes my eyes snap open. Beyond the small cage that holds me, it's dark and damp. I clench my jaw as I examine my surroundings. Soon my eyes fixate on the ghost staring at me from outside my metal prison. I yelped and throw my body backwards, hitting the back of the cage. I expected a bite of hard metal on my back. Something smooth bends around my shape instead. It hisses at me in response. I don't think it liked me that much anyway. My claws scrape the cold floor of the cage as I spin. The bars behind me morph into slithering vipers in defense stance, each one baring their fangs in anger. Careful! Your venoms will make the blood in your body solidify in seconds. That wouldn't be a very pleasant way to die. I look at the ghost in horror. I'm breathing so quickly that I'm convinced I'll die from lack of oxygen. Or so, I think. The vipers settle back into metal bars and I make myself small. I don't want to risk testing their patience again. The ghost is not a ghost, but a girl. Hair looks like ink that's been violently knocked over and spilled onto the floor. It melts into the dark surroundings, contrasting her gray, sickly-looking skin. Her expression is blank. I see her hands tightly clutching her white gown. Do you bite? Do you? I revealed my teeth through a snarl and watched as she showed hers with a small smile. The fur along my spine stands up. She starts to move and I flinch. The girl crawls towards the cage and I curl my nails. She reaches for me, a pale hand passing between the bars without resistance. It freezes right in front of my snout. Is she checking to see if I would really bite? Has she no fear, offering her hand so fearlessly in the presence of a beast? I may only be a pup, but the sheer force of my jaws can pierce right through her palm. I pull my face away from her hand and see her startle from my peripheral vision. She pulls her hand back and holds it against her collar. Her eyes lock with her as she stares at me with her lips pressed together. I think she expected me to bite her. It'll be hard for me to protect you if you're too scaredy cat to do as I say. My eyes snap back to the girl. I watch as she stands up and wipes her hands on her dress, not showing a single care for how dirty it's become. If you want to survive, you'll have to listen to my instructions. Okay, doggy? She tilts her head like she expects me to respond. Don't try to be too brave. You can only survive this place if you're smart. The others have too much fight in them. It made them foolish. My heart pounds in my chest from her words alone. She gives me another haunting smile. When your arm is better, I'll take you for a walk before he gets back. What? Is this what she sounds like when she's excited? It's unsettling. She suddenly moves close to the cage again. I jump back away, just enough to not risk getting into trouble with the vipers again. Scent of burning parchment and wilting lilacs return. The girl's hair falls. Wait. Shit, I didn't get this right. The girl's hair falls off her shoulders. I expected ink to trickle down and dye her dress black. My name is Dove. Horrible to meet you, Dove. Roses. I spent the night nursing the dregs of my fever. When I'd first woken up, I didn't take notice of how much it had already been soothed. But now, vague memories of violating hands surfaced in my thoughts. Did the girl Dove give me some kind of medicine during the height of my fever? My body still feels uncomfortably warm. I rest my head on one arm and glance at the one that had been hurt earlier. A clean bandage is finally wrapped around it, not enough to cut off the blood flow, but just enough to restrict its movement. Was this also Dove's handiwork? I sigh softly through my nose, then close my eyes. Time passes ambiguously in the cage, with nothing to reference. I don't know if it's been mere hours or days. A bowl of water sits in the corner of my cage. I know the dryness of my throat that I need to hydrate, but I have yet to muster up the courage to approach the bars that slither and rattle every so often. When I'm desperate enough to finally quench my thirst, the bars relievingly keep their metal forms. Feeling better now, I curled into a ball and my tails cradle my face. I want to go home. Exhaustion catches up to me once again. I fall asleep on crusty metal and wake onto dusty wood. The sound of wind chimes alert me into consciousness. My eyes snap open and my retinas are immediately burnt by the color that floods into them. On the floor in front of me is a kaleidoscope of light created by the morning sun. A stark contrast to the dark and dreary setting I was previously confined to. Maybe I dreamed it all in a feverish haze. I checked on the gouge around my arm. It's still there. A weight around my neck brings me back into focus. A collar is secured around my throat. Attached to it is a long and heavy chain that leads to the leg of a large wardrobe in the corner of the room. The bedroom I take in my latest cage. There are no longer venomous bars to keep me, but the state of confinement has not changed. My eyes move from the rainbows on the floor to the line of the chain restraining me, then to the rest of the room. I look at the windows and find swirling murals and expressive paintings of various creatures and monsters. The sun behind them illuminates the floor with speckles of color like a stained glass window. Past the frame of the window, the drawing continues in nonsensical scrawl. Less art decorates the walls, but shelves with cracked plant pots and hanging tangles of ivory take their place. Dirty cups and bowls sit forgotten in a dark corner. I briefly note two shallow dishes near where I lay. They look like they would be used by a pet. Judging from the surprised lack of grime from under them, it hasn't been that long since they were last used. Dusty books and crumpled parchment litter attend the floorboards. Taking up half the room is a canopied bed. Dark curtains are pulled tightly together, preventing me from seeing inside. The sound of scratching captures my attention. I dragged my gaze past piles of books. They are sitting on a raggedy blanket, hunched over and scribbling over the prints in a book. Is Dove. She gnaws on her lips and pinches her brows. I can hear her whispering something to herself. No. That won't work. I slowly lift myself off the floor, cringing at the sound of clanking chains following my movement. Dove makes no move, acknowledging my presence. So I continue approaching her. When I'm closer to her, I'm able to get closer to get a better look at what she's furiously writing. Scribbles of occult symbols make the words on the page completely legible. I swallow a lump in my throat. The collar on my neck feels heavy right now. Dove suddenly tears a page out from the book. A jarring sound makes me jump, and I slam into the tower of books, sending it toppling to the floor. Shred weighs heavily to me. I look back at Dove. She's now staring at me with wide eyes. You're awake! I release a small yelp and stare at her dumbfounded. She's brighter. Or maybe it's the luminous light filtering through the bedroom window. Something about it paints her in a rose-tinted lens that makes my wariness waver. The feeling instantly vanishes when she gets up and rushes towards me. I run away as fast as my legs allow me, but my air supply is abruptly cut off and I'm thrown off my feet. A sharp howl is pulled from my throat. I look behind me and see the chains of my collar is pulled and hold taut. I had reached its limits. I then see Dove standing in the spot I bolted from. Her gaze creeps along the chain, making its way to my crumpled form. I see blue eyes stare into mine, and I shudder. It feels like she could unravel me through sight alone. She looks at me like she knows. Then she perks up, snapping the tension away. Oh, right. You're probably starving. The others were also very skittish when they had empty bellies. Her voice trails off as though she become lost in thought. She starts weaving through the mess of book piles to reach the bedroom door. Wait here. I don't have much of a choice. Dove returns its bread rolls and a bowl. She sets the bowl down a couple feet in front of me and retreats back to chew on her food. I tentatively approach it. The bread smells like heaven. I lick my lips on instinct. It must have been ages since I last ate because I watched her tear chunks from it and mark every little crumb falling onto her white dress with yearning. I look down at the bowl she left for me. The sight of red fleshy chunks greet me. Raw meat. She gave me a bowl of raw meat. I can't eat this. Or, well, maybe I could. But the idea of it has nausea coursing through me. I stare at the fresh blood pooling at the bottom of the bowl. Then I glance over the bread. Then back down to the bowl, feeling conflicted. My stomach growls. I can feel saliva start to drip down the side of my mouth. I can't do it. Are you gonna let it go to waste? Dove's voice comes from right above me. Fear flutters in my stomach. Okay then. My eyes snap up. Dove reaches for me and I flinch, scattering away. She kneels in front of the bowl and dips her hand into it, crushing a fistful of squishy red meat between her fingers. She brings the raw meat to her mouth. What the fuck? Bile rises in my throat as I watch her chew through the raw flesh and swallow it with a sickly glub. She covers her mouth with the back of her hands and gags, then looks at me. She smiles at me, her teeth stained in a glistening red. What a horrible taste! A thin stream of blood falls from the corner of her mouth. I suppose you'd like something a little more appetizing. She gags again, then runs out of the room. I hear the sound of her retching from another room. Dove returns with a new bowl of what looks like stew. I inspect it thoroughly, checking for insects or anything inedible. When I surmise that there's nothing of the sort, I dig in greedily. My eyes begin to sting after the first few bites. Stew is so bland. It makes me yearn for my grandmother's cooking so badly. From the corner of my eye, I can see Dove watching me like a hawk. Like a single blink is enough to make me vanish. If only I could. As I finish eating the stew, a soft thudding captures my attention. I look back to see my whale tagging against the floor. I feel myself shrink with embarrassment. I immediately seize its movement, but not before Dove takes notice. Looks like your energy has returned. Her eyes move to my arm. Does it still hurt? I stare at Dove, then hesitantly put my weight on my wrapped up arm. Sharp pain is mostly gone, but a dull ache still remains. If the opportunity for me to run away came, I probably could do it, but not without difficulty. I made a frustrated whine. Dove tilts her head at me, considering me in my reply. She approaches me again, slowly this time. I hold my breath as she comes closer, her hands hovering near the collar around my neck. I'm suddenly hyper aware of how quiet it is. Suddenly aware of how hyper aware of how quiet it is. There's no drum of rain or crack of thunder to be heard from outside. Hope dares to grow inside my racing heart. Will you hurt me if I take it off? Doug gives me a curious look. Her head hovers, but she nods. The weight of the collar lifts off my shoulders. Then I bolt. My swift escape shoves Dove aside. I barely can see her get thrown to the floor as I make my way to the bedroom and make for the open bedroom door. I didn't know he was gonna escape. Dove makes a panicked noise behind me. fades out in my rush to leave her behind. Then I'm back to the hallway where the horror begins. I need to go back to the kitchen. I sprint to the stairs, and suddenly I'm skidding to a stop when the wall meets me at the end of the hall instead of the staircase. I stare in confusion. Did I go the wrong way? I look around the hall. I don't remember seeing this many doors. A sinking feeling unravels my gut. I run down a new hallway and turn to another, then another. My exploration of the mansion was cut short when I first arrived, so maybe I can't remember everything well enough. But I swear, these are not the same halls I walked through before. After I turn into hallway number 15 in this new labyrinth, the sound of something being dragged cuts off my thoughts. Look behind me, fear pulsing in my veins. A ghostly figure slowly walks down the cross-section of another hallway. Huh. Reminds me of the visual novel, Slay the Princess. Because, the same shit's happening again, but in different ways. When you basically fuck over the princess so many times, she ends up being deranged. And this time, the painting looks more deranged. In this game, anyway. Long hair protrudes from its head, running down from the floor swiftly like straw and hiding most of its long, thin limbs. Watch it disappear around the corner, completely frozen to my spot. Another ghost. I've never seen one this corrupt before. I now feel extremely vulnerable, like a beacon standing in the long and open corridor. Tapping noise is next. My heart pounds violently in my chest. I search for a sound. I immediately see another ghost heading straight towards me. I yelled and I crushed against the wall as if it had made me invisible. The ghost staggered towards me with bony knees locking together. What's that? Thin veil curtains its upper body, and it suddenly resembles a bird's beak peeks out at its chest. The closer it gets, the better I'm able to make a detail of its leathery skin, and the beady bloodshot eyes that dabble across its face above its rotting beak. Needle-thin arms speed and sharply as the elbow and reach. Needle-thin arms bend sharply at the elbow and reach back behind the ghost's head. Balances on its elbow and pulls itself forward on them. I make myself paper thin and shiver when part of its elbow brushes against one of my paws. I start breathing again when it passes quietly, and back away into an intersection of hallways. Another ghost almost tramples me. Two ghosts follow one another down the path of a bird-like ghost. One is a cluster of what looks like fungi and twisting fabric that melts into bumpy flesh. A stringy network of mycelium traits. A stringy network of mycelium trails behind it. The other creature creates a sound of glass crunching together with every steady step it takes. Its arm sticks out like pieces of wood that slightly swing as it walks, and where it faces should be a void framed by jagged, broken pieces of porcelain skin. I can still make out the raggedy maid uniform that clings to its bloated form. Follow the ghosts in a trance. Like a line of school children, they walk along a well-known path. Normally, when a ghost is corrupt from being trapped into the land of the living, every semblance of their humanity is lost. So where do these ghosts stalk to with so much purpose? They navigate the hallways without hesitation, twisting and turning through a route already well worn, and so painfully easily. They've been led back to the kitchen. I see Dove standing on the kitchen table, delicately twisting an incandescent bulb into the hanging light fixture. Dried black tears stain in her cheeks, but her expression betrays no sign of dejection. Another bulb is held loosely in her other hand. This one had been burnt out so badly that no light can penetrate its ashy, blackened surface. It took 40 years to develop this type of filament. The ghosts surround her. I watched them reach for her, and I opened my jaw to bark out a warning, but it choked up my rising panic. Dove doesn't notice them and continues to screw in the bulbs. I read that these bulbs can stay lit up for up to 1,200 hours. Claws brush against her skirt. And yet, after less than a week, their legacy of lighting the dark has been snubbed out forever. With one last turn of her wrist, light envelopes for the room. Something so wonderful. Dove stares into the bulb's light and her fingers caress the glass. It only breaks in a place like this. The ghosts have vanished. Dove gives no hint of awareness for the presence that have just left them. My blood thuds in my ears. Could she not have seen them? I looked at the doors that I'd used to enter the mansion. I heard Dove dust off her hands and toss the old bulb into the box, where it shatters among other pieces of glass. She sighs wearily. How long will this cycle continue for? I barely hear her words. Instead, I stare at the wall where the back door should be, and there's no door. I immediately freak out. I run to the wall, ignoring the ache of my arm, and scratch at old wallpaper, hoping the door was only hidden behind it. My claws tear through the wood, but as I continue scratching, the outline of the door does not reveal itself. I back away, staring at the shredded decoration and breathing rapidly. It is not there anymore. I turn my head up and see Dove sitting on the kitchen table, swinging her legs. She stares at the wall I had torn up and gives me a blank expression. I explode. My body ignites with a fiery rage as I growl and snarl at her. She frowns and her eyes turn downcast with guilt. I don't know how to get it back. I whimper and go back to scratch the door, more in desperation. Sorry. Enough. Tired of seeing you all in your despair. I reply with an indignant huff. I see Dove puff her cheeks in annoyance. I turned my head away and rested on my paws. There's no way out. It's better for you to just accept it. Growl rumbles in my throat. Even the front door is gone, so instead of wasting time, you may as well follow me and keep yourself occupied. I wish I could cry. My hairs lay flat against my skull. I landed myself right into the mouth of the carnivorous flower with the sweetness of shelter to lure me in. I should have noticed the sharp teeth at the entrance. Take a peek at Dove. She's like a caged bird in this house. Doesn't she hate it? How can anyone possibly live like this? Her patience reaches its end and she slides off the kitchen table. I cry out when she hauls me off the ground, and I bare my fangs at her when her face appears right before mine. My glare doesn't faze her. Follow, wolf. There's much to do. We return to the labyrinth of hallways. Dove seems to know her way around them well. Now that I'm not frantically running through them, I notice a huge difference in the manor's atmosphere. Less dirt coats the floor, ceiling lights illuminate the hallway, and it almost feels peaceful. Dove stops by a closet in the hallways. She grabs onto the handles of the doors, and it opens up to reveal shelves and cupboards of miscellaneous tools and war supplies. She climbs a stool to reach the highest shelf and retrieves a box with small buckets and brushes. I tense up at the sight of the stool beneath its sway back and forth. She climbs back down without issue before lending me into a room I recognize very quickly. She makes her way to the broken side table I spotted when I was first exploring the rooms of the mansion, and I take the time to look around. The dining table with only 3 chairs take up most of the room. Candles spike up from the top of the stalagmites. There's so many that I think they would render fire hazard if they were to all be lit. Hardened wax drips over the edge. I can see the end of the fountain pen, as well as scraps of paper. I'm unable to see a well of ink from my position, but I assume that is what runs down the dusty tablecloth in dark splotches. A glint catches my attention. On the other side of the room, I'm unsettled by the mirrors that cover the wall from floor to ceiling. I swallow a lump that forms in my throat and do not let my eyes linger on them. I lay on the floor and watch her rather strongly scented glue on the broken leg of the table. She roughly connected the broken leg to the rest of the table and fans it with her hand so it dries faster. She tests its sturdiness with her light finger and scrunches her nose when it wobbles. She twists around and digs in her box and pulls out a roll of twine with a bright expression on her face. My brows furrow together. Dove twirls the string around the leg and binds it tightly. When she's done, she sets the table straight again. Still rocks unsteadily, but it stays standing. This seems to be good enough for Dove. This seems good enough for Dove, because she picks up her box again and gives it a nod. I leave from my spots on the floor and spin around into a loud noise. In the corner of the room, the long-haired ghost from earlier stands bent over a broken vase. I flinch when Dove lets out a startled noise and starts to stride towards it. I bark in alarm. It's dangerous. She ignores me. Siri! I grab the back of her gown with my teeth to stop her. Dove's demeanor goes from angry to taken aback. She stops and looks down at me. I shock myself with my own actions and quickly drop her skirt. My Dove considers me for a moment, then switches her attention back to the ghost and marches over to him. You klutz! My jaw drops. I don't need another person to clean up after. The ghost laces its long fingers together and bows its head. When Dove gets closer to it, she stumbles and cries out. The ghost snaps its head back up to her. Dove checks the bottom of her foot and sees a shard embedded into the flesh. Red blooms from the small wound. The ghost makes a groaning sound and steps towards Dove. She hisses when it walks through the mess of the glass and drags it with them. It's concerned for her. I observe their interaction, feeling befuddled. Everything I know about corrupted ghosts is being challenged. I pause to think about how the ghost rushed to her side earlier. The ghost tugs on Dove's sleeve like it's asking for forgiveness. She continues to badger it while digging the shard out of her foot. I study them curiously. It wasn't because they wanted to cause her harm. I trail behind Dove when she leaves to treat the small cut when she returns to clean up the mess. We leave the ghost and Dove continues down whatever to-do list, and she has in her mind. While she pants over the scratches on the kitchen door, trying to match the old wallpaper, she speaks to me. Have you met them all? Have you met all of them already? She doesn't speak again until we run to another ghost. She waits into the hallway for Dove. She perks up when she sees what it's holding. Oh, thank you, Babel. She takes a small bundle of red roses from it, freshly torn from its bush. I follow her up to the window to see a tall, thin glass vase with withered roses, and it's sitting on the sill. Dove takes out the dead flowers and replaces them. Then she pauses and looks down at something below. Her face reveals nothing as she tears her gaze away from and makes her way down the hall again. Before following her, I stand on my haunches and try to peer out the window. A chill comes down on me when I look down and see a small patch of graves, each marked by a simple wooden cross. I break away from the unnerving sight and turn towards the hallway where Dove had gone somehow. She stands at the end of the hall waiting for me. The bird-like ghost's name is Growl, and the doll-like ghost's name is Odette. Dove introduces them officially when we run into them as we go around the manor doing mundane tasks. It's a sight I can't get used to. I can't understand how a young girl can act so normal around such monstrous beings. And seeing their translucent leathery skin or the fluids that drip from their decaying flesh is enough to send me reeling. But she does not flinch her fear. earlier when they had surrounded her in the kitchen. She could tell they were there, weaving her arms together to wrap her in her ghostly embrace. And she didn't care in the slightest. I start to think she's more disturbing than the ghosts. To become this corrupt, they would have had to stay trapped in this plane for a long time. Why are they still here? Their horrific forms border on pitiful. To be this far gone, it had to be some type of hell. Dove walks amongst them like they're her family. Though, no, that's not quite it. I rearrange my thoughts. Maybe the image of the grave flashes in my mind. It's because she is theirs. I watched her guide Grell's gangly limbs out of the hallway so they can pass through, like they're nothing but an annoying sibling. A monster, just like them. Maybe this cage she lives in isn't of her own making. Dove does these errands like a routine, putting books away in the library, cleaning up candles burned to the end of their wicks. By the time she finishes winding up the large grandfather clock in the hallway, the manor feels like a completely different place. The air is less stifled by dust particles, the rooms are brighter, and it feels like a home now. As we walk back to Dove's room, the sun begins its descent into a blazing orange horizon, and the evening cicadas make their shrill voices heard. Despite the manor feeling more livable, there is a feeling that it gives me that I cannot shake. A void that looms like a presence. It's like letters left unfinished, or tea half empty and turning cold. There is a sense of stagnation that places the manor outside of time's reach, and it leaves a noise that buzzes persistently in the air. Dove stops abruptly, and I almost trip over my paws, trying not to run into her. Take a peek from behind her and immediately let out a yelp. The very first ghost I had met stands at the end of the hallway. Dove doesn't move. I see the ghost stagger from the hall towards us, and I instinctively back away. Then Dove speaks. "It's okay." Her tone is not very convincing. The ghost gets closer, and I can see the details of her leaking entrails. I make a whimpering sound and hide behind Dove, keeping myself close to the walls. She's harmless. She doesn't do anything. I throw a quick glance at Dove when her voice falters. But watch. The ghost is right beside us. Its hollow eyes look down at Dove, and she holds its unseeing gaze with cold eyes. I don't breathe, but the acrid smell of rot overwhelms my heightened sense of smell. Tension between Dove and the ghost creates a pressure that thins the air, making my lungs ache for oxygen. Pain seizes my chest just when I can no longer hold my breath in. The ghost continues down the hall passively. I exulted loudly. I startle when Dove clenches her fist beside me. Her eyes follow the ghost for a couple seconds longer, and then she cuts off her stare and moves on. Quickly chase after her, not wanting to be alone with this particular ghost again. Ever again, if my luck allows it. I look back for a split second, and the ghost had just disappeared. Dove's shoulders are squared as we return to her room. Since the sun has set in the opposite direction of her window, the scattering of colors from the morning is long gone. Her relationship with the hallway ghost is much different from the others. The way she spoke about her almost seemed resentful. I pad to a corner, stalling for a moment when I see the collar from earlier on the floor. I narrow my eyes at it and picked it up with my teeth. Then I throw it at the far wall. I give the collar one last glare and then curl up on the floor. Dove settles cross-legged in the middle of her book, towers, and reaches for random text. I let out a big yawn, feeling heavy after the events of the day. I don't know if there's enough time in the world to process everything that's happening to me since I left home. I close my eyes and feel the tendrils of my sleep curl around me. Do you think people can come back from the dead? Wait. See, she's doing rituals to resurrect people from the dead? Oh. She asks it so quietly I almost don't hear her. I don't think she expects an answer. And I cannot give her one. Dove's roses. I winced at the bites. The roses are extra hungry today. After not feeding them for a while, their petals bleach into stark white. I watched as my blood saturates the colorless flowers, then narrows my eyes when I spot a parasitic fungi at the base of the bush. Parts of the bush is already starting to wither because of it. I reach down and tear it out harshly. Dirt sprays my gown and I crush the fungi in my fists. I know more will sprout in its place. Seeing such a blight this close to a rose bush makes a bolt of anger rise in me. Just seeing it makes me want to destroy it. I walk to a different section of the greenhouse. They're right next to the corpse of the fungi's latest victim. My heart clenches at the sight. Its eyes are still open. My fingers down on the lid of the dead wolf. But it's too late. Terror on its face is already cemented in time. Whoa. The wolf is dead? My fingers curl and my nails stab into my palm, making the bite sting. I return to the rose bush and continue feeding them. Thunder and lightning crash above me. Will it lure another pitiful soul tonight? Hear a door slam and I flinch, crushing a bulb in my hand. My ears listen intently, searching for lingering traces of his presence. When I find none, I take a deep breath and finally let myself relax. I tear the bowl from its stem and my hands fall into my sides. The sound of the rain is so clear now that I close my eyes to let it wash out everything else. I relish in its violence against the roof of the greenhouse and tremor under the crisp cracks of thunder. To pass the time, now that it's mine again, I whisper something my mother taught me under my breath. Then I hear a whimper come from behind me. Death returns. I look up from the view of books in our minds, of more books, minds, and see Dove. What just happened? Did he just die? Well, I'm gonna hold off for now. Getting a little tired from reading. But thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. If you want to see more of this, you can comment if you want. I don't know if I'll come back for this. But yeah. See ya.